We are continuing in our series on our devotional series on Philippians, and as we have seen, Paul ended up in a very similar situation to what we have today. He was in lockdown just like we're in lockdown, although his lockdown was not because of some pandemic, but it was because the Roman authorities had put him in prison. And actually his situation was a lot worse than ours, because at least we can go out to the store, we can go out to the pharmacy, we can take walks. But he was chained to a Roman guard, and so he couldn't go out at all. He didn't have a cell phone, he didn't have Zoom to do meetings, he didn't have the internet, and so his situation was actually a lot worse than ours. But today I want to focus on just a couple of verses from chapter 1 and verses 20 and 21. From lockdown, Paul writes this: I eagerly expect and hope that I will in no way be ashamed, but will have sufficient courage so that now, as always, Christ will be exalted in my body, whether by life or by death. For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. Now, normally in our culture, we don't really like to talk about death. It's a subject that we usually avoid. But now with the COVID-19 virus staring us in the face, death is something that we're much more accustomed to. And I think a lot of people would give an awful lot to have that confidence that Paul had in this passage here, that for dying for him would be gain. And the reason that Paul has that confidence, and the reason that we can have that confidence, is because by Christ dying and rising again, he made that confidence a reality for us. But before death comes life. And so let me ask you this question. What does it mean for you to live? Paul writes here, for me to live is Christ. But if you were to finish that sentence, what would you put in that space there? For me to live is what? How would you fill in that blank? Because the reality is that all of us live for something. There's something that drives our lives. There's something that gives us our value, that gives us our fulfillment in life. And for many of us, we would probably put in there family. We might put in job. We might put in career. We might put in sports. We might put in pleasure. We might put in things like that. And all of these things are not necessarily bad, but if they're the ultimate thing in your life, then when they're taken away, and certainly they will one day be taken away from you, then our lives have a tendency to fall apart. You see, all of these things are a very insecure foundation to base our life on. And Paul says here that his life is based on Christ. And because it's based on Christ, it can't change. It can't shift. It can't change because of a virus or because of people or because of the time or the circumstances, because he can never lose Christ. He can only get more of him and enjoy him even deeper. And that's why Paul says here, for him to die is gain. When he dies, he simply gains Christ. With death, he only gains more of what he has been living for, and that is namely Christ. And so the great hope that we have as Christians is that when we die, we don't just go into extinction, but we go to be with Christ. And in his arms, we will find everything that we could possibly wish or desire. But we can only gain Christ when we live for him. So for Paul, going through a very difficult circumstance in a dark, smelly prison, and even facing the possibility of death, he can say, look, friends, I'm not losing anything. I'm gaining. And so let me ask you that question again. How would you fill in that blank? For me to live is what? And to die is what? If your answer is anything but Christ and gain, then I would strongly urge you to reconsider what you are basing your life on.